And we are recording. So to get things started, I'll go ahead with introductions for program staff. My name is Brandon Andrews. I am the San Juan County Parks and Fair Director. And my colleague, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Gabe Conway. I am the Projects and Grant Coordinator here at the Parks and Fair Department.
Excellent. So today we're here to talk about cultural access. And so I thought what we do is actually walk through this, how I think most folks will approach it. And that is we're going to kind of go through the website, kind of point out what things are, where they are, and then go through the guidelines and application document. And then at the end, we'll have robust room for questions if you have them. So if you can, please kind of make a note as we're walking through something, and we'll go back. We'll be able to go back to all those web pages, anywhere in those documents, to make sure that you have your question seen, contextualized, answered, everything that we can do to support you in a successful grant experience. So briefly, I'm mostly gonna be sharing my screen from here, and we will get up and going. So let's share. And so if you're anything like me, you will probably be starting at Google. And so we're going to go ahead and look for San Juan County Cultural Access. And I don't know why this page here is showing, because the program proposal, it's an archived page on our website. So I'm not sure why it's still able to be seen, but we're looking for this Cultural Access San Juan, which should be showing up as Cultural Access San Juans, because this is obviously for all of the San Juans and not just San Juan Island singular. And so when you go to that link, this is the page for the program. Cultural Access San Juans, what you'll see up here in the upper right is contact information from Gabe and myself. Gabriel will be taking care of most of the day-to-day functions of the program, along with support from myself. And you'll see key dates down here. So applications opened last Monday, but I've never met anyone who submitted a grant application on the first day that the window was open. So that still has not happened to this. But of course, if you look a little further down, February 16th is actually when the window closes. And so this last Saturday, we met with folks for an application support meeting. Obviously, we're here on today, January 13th. And then for folks who can't make the work day like we're doing today, or can't make the weekend, we've got one after work tomorrow at 6 p.m. So if you know anyone who's interested, was unable to make these first two, let them know that we'll be here. Or if you just had too much fun today and would like to do this all over again, we will be broadcasting live from Microsoft Teams tomorrow at 6 p.m. So for those who are unfamiliar, what is this? The Cultural Access Program was passed in December of 2024, so a little over a year ago. It is a 0.1% sales tax designed to provide stable long-term support for our local arts, science, culture, and heritage organizations. But the tax did not go into effect until April 1 of last year, so it only has 3 quarters of collection, not a full year. When it is a full year, we expect that number to be approximately $800,000 annually. And so most of that comes from our visitors and tourists in a lot of ways. Of course, not completely. So it actually only costs an average San Juan County household about $20 per household. And so it's kind of really encouraging to see other people's dollars in a lot of ways supporting our local nonprofits and programming for our local residents and citizens. And so what are the goals? The RCW, or the kind of the state law that enables this program, has some stipulations, and schools come first. And so what this does is this provides funding for schools. Our local San Juan County Council set that as 20% of all funds to go to schools. Now, what this does not do is provide a check for the 20% of funds to go straight to schools for them to just take in and use that way. What this is it's for the schools specifically. It's a reimbursement-based program. So any field trips that cost them money, any programming that is done by bringing nonprofits in for supplemental learning programs, at the end of the month, those school districts will invoice us as a department for what that nonprofit invoiced them, and we will pay them back. So it is some budget relief on the school district, but it's very directly tied to either in-classroom learning, out there in field trips, or in professional development for teachers and school staff. But because field trips can be expensive, it also authorizes additional 8% of funds directly for transportation, and that can pay for Obviously, the cost for those, for the cost of buses, school bus drivers, substitute teachers, ferry fees, et cetera. It really is meant to take that burden off of getting folks there. So and it's really meant to be county-wide. So if the Lopez Theater Group would like to put on a performance for San Juan or Orcas Island or Shaw Island school district students, we're going to pay for buses for them to go over and see that kind of performance. And so it's really meant to kind of help cross-pollinate experiences across the islands beyond what currently exists as well. So those funds that go to schools other than transportation go to the nonprofits. So there's been a little bit of misunderstanding about that. So I just kind of wanted to be a little bit more clear on that. And the rest of the funds it doesn't say here, sorry, this is for schools, but these are the funding goals is for schools and for nonprofits. A small percentage is held back to be able to administer this program by the county. And so a small portion is there. And then the rest of the 62% of funds goes out in grants. So because we only have 3 quarters of collection and not a full year of funding for this first year because the tax went into effect on April 1st, we are only operating one of what will be 2 grant programs beginning next year. So this year, the comprehensive organizational support is not available. And so everyone will be applying for what we're calling impact grants. And that is the only program available this year. Beginning in 2027, those comprehensive support grants will be available. So when both programs are up and running, there's some distinctions between the two, but impact grants are generally for newer organizations that provide a very limited window of programming. It could be a single event, it could be a small series of events, etc. So the comprehensive organizational support is largely marked by organizations that are doing programming year round. And so those are some of the biggest differentiators between those grants. So these are our key funding goals. Some of the frequently asked questions, I won't read through them all here, but what is it? Where does money come from? I've kind of, touched base on that. How can it be used? How do you apply for a grant? And we're going to go to this funding opportunities page here in just a moment. And, why would the county council vote this into existence? Because, times are tough and more taxes are dollars out of people's pockets. And what do you get for that? What is the value? And so this is some of those elements there. And if you're ever curious about, okay, are we the first one to do this? No, we are not. We are really following in the model of other organizations and cities that have done this. We are certainly not basing our program off of what King County has done. They generate so much money, it's unbelievable, but they have millions and millions of people to serve. But we've been able to learn so much from our other cities. So you'll find 2 big buttons here: funding opportunities and additional resources, and you'll also find those up here on the left-hand side. But I know a lot of folks might be reading this from their phone, so they're going to run into these buttons far before they see stuff on this left-hand side due to mobile formatting. So let's go to funding opportunities, where we'll spend the most of our time here. And there we see our good friends over at the Lopez Center for the Community and the Arts having an event. And so, like it says here, all applicants will be on impact grants this year. And to apply, we need to start with eligibility. And it starts with your mission. Your organization's primary purpose, meaning your stated mission and majority of your activities, must be to advance and preserve arts, culture, heritage, and or science. And how that is further defined, we'll get into here a little bit shortly. But this is where it starts. Is this what your mission is? Is this what your activities are aimed towards? Additionally, you must have a nonprofit status, and you must be based in San Juan County, or if you are based outside of San Juan County, the majority of your services must be provided within San Juan County to be eligible. And lastly, you must produce at least 1 event or program per year for the public or youth. And then you're going to download the application and email that in to us. So much about this program is about maintaining and expanding programming. How do we support these organizations in providing more programming to connect people to the wonderful, marine life that is around here, the wonderful history and culture that is around here, the arts that are so vibrant that really just kind of make our county stand out across the state, and how do we connect more people to that? So this is kind of a little table that kind of further shows the differentiation between these two grant programs that will be up and running next year, or at least this one here. So again, impact funding is a 1-year contract of funding up to $25,000, and it's for those organizations deemed eligible that I just talked about. And it does require a 50% match, whether that's volunteer labor, funds, and materials. So we're going to talk about that more to really hopefully comfort folks that that is not a barrier to entry, because we certainly don't want that. Comprehensive funding, when this opens up in 2027, is 2 years. It's a little bit more stable long-term funding with organizations have at least a 2-year history of public programming year-round, making sure that that's happening. So let's go application support. These webinars, I think you found them here. And again, one more tomorrow. And of course, folks can reach out to myself or Gabe at any time to really kind of help you get you going in the right direction. So the big document is right here in the guidelines and where we're mostly going to be working from. And so let's kind of walk through this. I'm going to try and not read an entire document to you. There'll be sections about items we've already talked about. So I'm going to kind of highlight that that's there and kind of keep moving to make sure that this is still helpful. So on this front page, we're here for the impact funding. The deadline is 5 p.m. Monday, February 16th. And we've talked about what the Cultural Access Program is. This is impact funding. This is not comprehensive funding. And the funding cycle is kind of important here, is July 1st, 2026 through June 30th, 2027. When we went and talked to other cities and counties that have done this work and asked them, what are your best lessons learned? What do you wish you knew when you started this, as we currently are? Is that because so much of this work is around the schools, syncing up this grant cycle to their budget and calendar year is super important, because the schools have to do probably a little bit more further out forecasting for some of their activities than the flexibilities nonprofits have. As long as the check shows up, we find that most nonprofits are pretty happy. So really wanting to make sure that we, for those who have the most strict requirements of how they need to be planning, we can meet their needs and also be supporting everyone else who's also ideally a little bit more flexible for these things. So you're going to send your application via email to culturalaccess@sanjuancountywa.gov. And of course, here's the link to the webpage. We've talked about these dates before. The new ones, again, close on the 16th. We're aiming for a May 1st, 2026 notification of an intent to fund. And so we're going to put an approximately in there, give ourselves a little bit of cushion. And then that May-June period be working on developing contracts with those funded organizations. And then the contract period begins July 1st. Big table of contents here. And as you see that there's quite a few pages of this, also just want to throw out a huge kudos and thank you to Gabriel, who did so much of the formatting work. The two of us would sit down and revise and revise and revise. And then all of those things that create spacing errors and the rest of it, formatting. I'm just so grateful for the work that Gabriel has done for this. And again, staff contact information, Gabriel and myself. Funding goals, we've talked about supporting those nonprofits in those particular fields, making sure we expand access to programming to youth and the general public. And we want to support the sustainability and collaboration amongst cultural sector organizations. One of the things that I think is really neat when you look at the state law that enables this type of program is that it's not like the first thing it really talks about is that our cultural sector, the arts, culture, science, zoology, all of those things are actually major economic drivers, and that this was really envisioned as an economic development program, is that if these types of organizations are increasing programming and bringing people in, is that there is an economic driver there. And so that is a major portion of these funding goals. So categories. So when we talk about what is an arts organization, a cultural organization, heritage, science, because culture and heritage feel like they could be pretty similar. We want to make sure that we have a really good definition that you can, when you're looking at your mission statement and ask yourself, do I belong to one of these categories, that it feels like that is easy to determine, because we also have really great organizations like family resource centers, and I have not read their mission statements. This is not a comment about them, but like they do lots of things. So as the state requires your activities to fit in these boxes, when you look at your mission statement for whatever type of organization, do you fit? So An arts organization is one that provides programming across the following artistic fields: design, folk and traditional arts, creative placemaking, dance, literary arts, multidisciplinary arts, music, media arts, theater, and visual arts. And what you're going to see across these categories is that it's really not meant to be limiting. It's meant to, like, hopefully you see a pretty broad definition there of, trying to make sure that folks feel invited and that they fit in those categories. A culture organization is an organization that provides public programming focused on a particular group that shares a common and immutable personal identity trait and that seeks to advance or preserve the traditions, language, knowledge, skills, cuisine, or achievements of that group. Heritage organization means an organization that provides programming that focuses on the identification, documentation, exhibition, interpretation, and or preservation of the past, including all people, places, events, and physical spaces of any community of people. And science organization means an organization that provides programming across one or more of the following scientific fields: physical sciences, life sciences, natural sciences, earth and space sciences, engineering, technology, and work that applies to scientific methods or engineering design cycles. As I read that, I was reminded that I have frequently been told I speak really fast. And so if that is happening and I'm tripping over my tongue or you're not quite catching what I'm saying, please drop something in the chat or raise a hand to let me know, because I want to make sure that this is, while I'm trying to move through things quickly, it's not so quickly that people can't understand what I'm saying. We've talked about what impact funding is. So we talked about that there's a cap for $25,000 per year, but there's also a minimum of $2,500. And I find that most organizations won't struggle to meet the need of the minimum. And so here's where we talk about the match requirement. And so it's 50%. And so your match can be using cash or donated time or materials or a combination. It can also use a match including projected income from other grants, fundraising, or income from things like ticketing or tuition fees. And we do have a form for you to fill out that actually auto-fills it out. We've got an example because we want, again, to provide all the tools and resources for this to feel as easy as possible. We talked about eligibility. We've talked about your mission statement here, your nonprofit status, that you're in San Juan County or you're outside, but the majority of your services are in San Juan County, and you've got to do a program once per year. The Washington State RCW here talks about who is not eligible. So the state or its political subdivisions, no radio or television broadcasting network or station, cable communication system, internet-based communications venture or service, newspaper or magazine. And that's what the state kind of calls out. And then we're saying, if you're on whether this applies to you, please let us know. So for instance, like parks departments, like ourselves or Island Rec or Orcas Rec or something like that, those junior taxing districts, those government entities are not eligible for funds. The only thing that we as the Parks Department are eligible for are the funds to administer this program. It's not to do more programming for ourselves. We can't use these funds to put on a bigger county fair or anything like that. It is specifically for the allocation to administer this program. So government entities are not eligible to receive these funds. So let's talk about what you can use them for. And one of the things that I really appreciate about the foresight of the legislation that makes this possible is that it can pay for really important, boring things. I know a lot of people that I recognize names here probably have written for a number of grants, and they always want to pay for stuff, right? They want to pay for the stuff, but not the people or the ability to make it happen. But this can pay for any of that, as long as you can talk about how it furthers the ability to do programming. So it can be staffing costs, it could be capital improvements, technology, training, reduced tuition, insurance, legal fees. It could marketing, advertising. It could be your phone bill, or your website. What do you call it? Your website hosting cost per year. All of those things, because you're doing all of those things in support of these programmings and festivals and ADA accommodations, making sure that more people can get into your programs, etc. What can this not support? Programming outside of San Juan County, work that is commercial in nature. You can't use it to put on fundraisers or galas in any way. You can't use it towards debt service or endowment building. You can't use it for events or activities that are about a specific political or religious practice. And again, no education programs outside of San Juan County or that are for exclusively outside there. You can't use it as payment to a current member of the Cultural Access Advisory Board, which is currently accepting members. if you're interested in serving on the board that will review these applications. So you can't pay them or you can't pay San Juan County employees. As much as I know you're looking to pay me for your work, you can't do it and I won't accept it. And as we mentioned earlier, those who are excluded by all those stations and cable communication systems, newspapers, magazines, can't pay for it. Application support, what we're doing right now, one-on-one support with staff. Get a hold of us. We would love to help you make sure you are understanding what you're putting together and feel really good about your application when it goes in. And then, of course, shoot us an email. What this section here really means is that what you're doing is a contract for services from the county. So by this program, San Juan County, as a government, is saying, we want to provide more programming to the public, but also know that we can't do it ourselves. So to do that, we're entering into contracted services with nonprofits to make sure that that happens. That is what this section is saying, and that we're going to develop deliverables for those contracts, which are part of your application, saying, I'm going to put together 2 workshops and we're going to do 2 public programmings. Those are going to become your contract deliverables to make sure that San Juan County is making good on its taxed purpose, which is to expand programming. Requirements for funded organizations. This is basically insurance, stuff that I think you would pretty well expect. General liability insurance. Now, the things here, this was a new type of insurance to me, which is abuse and molestation insurance. But apparently pretty common for school districts. So I know that it's out there for some folks. And to be clear, this is not for everything. This is for programming that is exclusively for youth, seniors, or people with disabilities, or one-on-one programming. So if it is a program specifically for youth, specifically for seniors, or specifically with people with disabilities, and the general public is not invited, you need this type of insurance. But if your program is a concert on the law and everyone is provided, or it is a workshop in which everyone is provided, is allowed access to, this is not required. This is only if you're working one-on-one with some of these vulnerable populations of children, seniors, and people with disabilities. Commercial automobile, if you are transporting people for your for your programming. So if they're not arriving on their own and you've got a van or a car and you're picking people up, you'll need to make sure that you have insurance for that, but certainly you already do. Same thing with marine liability insurance. If the Whale Museum is taking folks out on the water, you're going to have marine liability insurance. So hopefully, as you read through these things, these are already part of what it means to exist within your organization and are not barriers, ideally. And then again, if you've got folks that are W-2 employees that these are already requirements found elsewhere. It's just one of those things where we have to say it, but hopefully is not a barrier. You have to be in legal compliance with the federal government in Washington State. You have to have a business license. And for the programs that this money is supporting, there's requirements that Cultural Access San Juan's is acknowledged in all those public announcements, programs, advertising, and other forms of notice related to the programming. So, and we'll provide a communication guideline and toolkit. It won't be much. It's mostly going to be some available logos for you to put on printed materials, things like that. Really not looking it to be an onerous process for that kind of funding acknowledgement. So we talked about, if the goal is to expand programming, it's about equity and access. So, but there are way more forms of equity and access than I think are generally talked about. And so most folks, when they begin to hear these words, they think about DEI, right? And so the first part here, it probably falls under that. Acceptance-based access, about welcoming and belonging, making sure that everyone who comes to your program is welcome based off of no matter who they are, whatever their background is, whether they're, Black, Indigenous people of color, people who identify as LGBTQIA+, or they speak different languages or different levels of education or experience, different income. And so it's not about the physical characteristics, it's about the full breadth of your diversity as a human being on this planet and making sure that you feel welcome in those spaces. But when we talk about equity and access, it's also about a lot of other things. It's about communications access. Are you only advertising your programs to your existing form of newsletter followers? What are you doing to expand your communications access to make sure that people have a real chance at seeing what your programs are? Disability access. How's your physical infrastructure to be able to accommodate folks that might be mobility impaired? Do we need items that help for, is your website screen reader compliant so that someone who's blind can get on your website and have that information available to them. Financial access. What are we doing to offer free and reduced price options, scholarships, providing free supplies and materials? So geographic access. Are they accessible to people? Can you be partnering with other institutions that have infrastructure for people to be able to be there quickly, or have built-in communities? So that could be your public library branches, parks and rec districts, granges, all of those things. And you can continue to read about different forms of access here, whether it's internet-based access, public access, and etc. Youth education programs. So this is really this section is entirely about the school program, which says that you have to be a public school in San Juan County doing to receive these funds. It's to pay for these nonprofits. The learning that we want all learning to be fun, but not all fun is learning, and this program is meant to pay for the learning. And so all of the work that's done out in field trips or in-service learning and classroom experiences has to be based off of Washington State learning standards, that we're not just paying for kids to go to the trampoline park kind of a thing. And so that kind of continues on there. The application, you're going to email it to culturalaccess@sanjuancountylaw.gov. And that deadline is Monday, February 16th. It's 5 p.m. It will not be possible to edit or submit an application after the deadline. So we want to make sure that people know about it early and often, and make sure that we get as many good applications in as we can. So we're going to talk about the application components. And so I'm actually going to do this in a different way. So because we wanted to make things seem, kind of have a through line from material to material to material, is that these guidelines from here are mostly the application from here. And so what I want to do is, if we're talking about application components, is that you're going to find when you come back here's your impact funding application form right there, nice and easy. And so, organizational background. What's your mission statement? Because remember, that's the first thing we're checking for eligibility. And tell us about your organization. And if you come back here to the guidelines, what's your mission statement? Tell us about your organization. We wanted you to see the application in context of the rest of the guidelines above, so you can kind of go back and forth and reference if you need to. And so that, but we obviously don't want a 26-page document back as your application. So we've kind of broken it out to make that easier for folks. So let's go over here to the grant application. And we tried to kind of compared to the other examples we were looking at, we eliminated we eliminated questions we didn't think were applicable. We eliminated, we try to limit the number of questions so that we can quickly understand if an organization is clearly eligible, if they're doing the kind of programming that is required, et cetera. And so, in 50 words, we should know your mission statement is, a minimum of 100 words to tell us about your organization. What does it do to fulfill its mission? Who are your primary participants, audience, collaborator, partners? We're really not looking for dissertations, but we want to give an opportunity for you to expound as much as possible, but also provide a little bit of information. What is your proposal sentence in 50 words max? What are you really looking to do? For example, you plan to cover certain operating expenses, allowing you to offer free ticketing and thereby lowering or removing a barrier to participation. This is not a general philosophical statement about your organization's work. That's what are you looking to do? And then contract deliverables is the next part. And so you're going to list 2 to 4 key programs deliverables for each quarter as applicable. But if you're a one event per year, obviously that may be a little bit more difficult. But it could still have multiple deliverables per quarter, because let's say quarter 1 is really about doing all of your planning. Quarter 2 is about executing that single event. Quarter 3 is about doing your after action review, what you're going to be making changes for next year. So even some, as someone who produces a 4-day county fair, for those of us that work on it, we certainly know it is not a 4-day event. For us, it is a year-round event that we're thinking about all the time. And we know other events are certainly the same way. So we're going to come up with those deliverables, 2 to 4 per quarter. Some of those are listed down here as examples: creation and public release of 4 short videos, about 3 to 5 minutes long. This could also be press releases, 2 full-day, week-long education camps, whatever that might be. Okay, program proposal. What general public programs are you going to create with these funds? And so these 300 to 500 words here, are really, about the next two areas. And so, so 300 to 500 words here, and then, elaborating on your capacity and feasibility for these things. And this is 300 to 500 words for all of these questions in total, not 300 to 500 words each. Again, we don't want to make this super difficult. But by the time you kind of follow the prompts, I think you'll find that you're going to get to the minimum word count pretty quickly. Same thing for planning, promotion, evaluation. We really want to make sure that this has been well thought out and is set up to succeed. Particularly if it's a new venture and a newer nonprofit or entity trying to take this kind of work on, should be there. And then a proposal budget. And so we're going to pull up that form here in a moment. It's a nice, easy Excel worksheet. And so projected expenses, but it could be staff, contractors, materials, facility rentals, security, safety, or access services. So if you don't currently have audio descriptive devices for your programming, you would like to start doing that. That's a perfectly good use of this. And do you need to contract that out? Do you need to buy the equipment or rent it? Whatever the case may be. Promotion, insurance, permits, capacity building, legal support. Again, it pays for boring things, and we love that because boring things are how the exciting things happen, right? And then we're going to talk about projected income. And so that could be from admission or tuition to those particular programs, grants from other foundations. Do you receive LTAC funds? Do you receive PFAT funds or other state or federal grants, that are help supporting this programming? That's all matching. Again, we don't want the matching to be a barrier. Cash from donations, your own cash, volunteer time from your board or advisors. It's not just the volunteer time that goes in on the day of the programming event. Because, I have volunteered with the community theater. I've been on the community theater board here on San Juan Island and know that all the time that goes up there. And so when nonprofits run on volunteers. And when you start calculating that at $40.28 per hour, which is a third-party valuation of volunteer work that we're using, that should add up really quickly and hopefully really take care of that match. Again, do not want it to be a barrier. And you'll find some additional details here. And that's your application, with the attached budget form. So let's take a quick look at that. And here's the example. So here's the blank. What are your projected expenses? A description, total, and it's gonna, there's a little formula here that's gonna add all that up for you. Expenses to be covered by donations. And so these are in-kind expenses. So that'll end up coming up here for your total expenses here. And then your earned income, contributed income, your own organizational cash. Here's where you end up putting in your professionals, volunteers, plus their hours, or total value, which is that 4028, and going from there, donated materials, their value. And so, by the time you're done this projected income, this must be at least twice your requested grant amount for your 50% match. Sorry, we need to update this. I left a little typo. That was my bad. I worked on this form. So yes, this is, needs to be half of the requested grant amount to be the 50% match. So we will get that corrected and re-upload it, and it'll all look like the same link to you. So don't worry too much about that. And here's an example that someone has come up with here. And so in this particular case, where it was supposed to be the one-to-one match, but we're only doing 50% match versus those other cities and counties, they got to the same spot they needed to. So in our version, if you have you far exceeded the match, and that is fantastic and really happy for your organization and how well it's performing. So these, again, here's your guidelines. That's about everything here. Here's that application process there that we're going through. And then after the application, it goes into reporting requirements. And we wanted this to be super easy. And so the first thing we got to get up and doing is get your signed contract. We're going to need a W-9 for your organization, business license, proof of insurance. So what does your reporting look like on a quarterly basis? What would, because this is about programs, what was your date? What was the program name? Did you do it with other funded organizations? Was this at a, was this at a school? Was this at your facility? Was this out at the public library? Was this specific to the public, or was this a youth education program through the schools? How many people, and was it free? So it's just like, what was the basic data of what your program did? And so the next part of this, so that's really what it's going to be. And ideally, if we can get some photos back, et cetera, about reporting would be great. So, and then the application review process. What does that look like? There is a 5-member Cultural Access Review Board, CARB, that will be reviewing these, scoring them, and making recommendations to the county council. For those who have applied, it'll be pretty similar to the lodging tax or the PFAP funds that go out there, where that body makes a recommendation to it and votes on it to council for adoption, and that's how this is going to work as well. Other things that I think you'll find important, fiscal sponsor form. And so what a fiscal sponsor is if you are someone or a loose group, a loose organization that is not a nonprofit, and you would like to do programming, there is a way to go about that, which is that an eligible nonprofit signs up to be your fiscal sponsor. I've only got one example of how this might work. I don't know if they're going to apply for funding, but for instance, there is a group on Lopez Island called Friends of the Lopez Island Canoe Landings, and they like to help pay for the associated costs for canoe landings that land on Lopez Island. But they are not a nonprofit, so an eligible nonprofit in San Juan County could sign up to be their fiscal sponsor to help this kind of program happen. And this does not take place of the fiscal sponsored nonprofit. This is not their application. So let's say the Lopez Island Historical Museum decided to be the fiscal sponsor. So the Lopez Island Historical Museum puts in their own application because they want to do their own programming and stuff, and then they can be the fiscal sponsor for another organization. So it doesn't make that organization have to choose. But there are, if you read through this, there are some, because fiscal sponsors provide the overall legal and fiscal responsibility for the sponsored organization's, contract. And then Gabe, I see rising tides here. I need to update that as well from past draft language. And so, those same things about insurance are required. One of the things that the optional services that fiscal sponsors can do, you can do the bookkeeping or payroll services, because again, all of that reporting, the projected budget needs to be part of that, and they can keep, it's listed in here somewhere, they can keep a small portion to be that, they can cover administrative fees up to 10% of the funding contract. To help make that possible for them, to make it worth their while. Because if you're taking on the contract and legal obligations of this contract, you're probably going to need some administrative covering to help make that happen. So those are all of your documents here. You'll find the comprehensive doesn't have anything embedded here. Just we want folks to know that it will be here when it launches in 2027. So the other page that we talked about are resources for funded organizations. So you've applied, you've received funding. Congratulations. I'm so excited to see what you do with your Cultural Access San Juan's grant funds and the programming that you're going to put out there. So you're funded. The fine folks at Alchemy Art Center are doing a lovely painting class in this photo. And so here's where you're going to, what do you need? Your grant quarterly reporting. And we've got this waiting for you right here. So here are your quarterly report instructions again. That chart that I was talking to you about, brief narrative and supporting materials. This is a one-pager. This is what that is looking like. And then, that program summary chart, that's the one I was talking about. Like, what was the date? Who did you do it for? Was it for in schools? Was it, was the event? Who was there? And you can continue to fill this out over, each of the quarters. So that way there's kind of a, there's a running total for all of those things. And, there's some instructions here to make that a little easier. But I think most folks will find this pretty self-explanatory. And then we still need to put together the yearly report form. It'll look remarkably similar. And we will get things out there for funding acknowledgement and those kind of logos. So some of the stuff is still rolling out, but everything you need for applications is up and ready to roll. And then how to invoice for payments. So there's some information there as well. So that's everything that I had to go over via screen sharing. So now wanted to turn it back. So if you have no questions, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time and attention this afternoon, and really excited to see what our community does with these funds. And you're free to leave at any time. But if you would like to stick around, ask questions, or see questions that other folks may ask, that's where we're going to kind of transition to now. So I'm going to go ahead and open up to questions, and it looks like Tracy has her hand raised for the first.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for this opportunity. My question is this: if we wanted to use at least some of the funding to provide programs free for the local schools on the San Juan Islands, what I'm really wondering about is how the transportation logistics could work with that, because what we've done before when we've had similar type grants and we're covering a mission, we're covering the program, we've said like, okay, you get a certain amount for how many classes you bring to the Whale Museum. So if you're bringing, like we did like $100 per class, and if you had 2 classes, they would get reimbursed $200 for transportation costs, whether that's ferry or bus. But it sounds on your grant, it was like it was really coming from the school's perspective of it. So I'm wondering how that works.
Great question. So yes, you are correct. The way that that's going to work is that is going to be happen entirely from the school perspective. So you're going to arrange for the school to come over to the Whale Museum, and any direct cost that they have with you, you will bill the school for, and then they will send us that invoice, which we reimburse them for their transportation costs. Like each school district is given an overall dollar budget, which is 8% that then needs to be divvied up equitably between the 4 school districts. And of that budget amount, they send us the costs for buses, ferries, fuels, etc. And we again pay that back via a reimbursement. If your programming would like to reimburse transportation as part of your program cost, you can include that as part of it, and they're as part of it. Because this is a great question that we would need to sort out, because while the state legislature allows for both programming costs and transportation costs, I would need to check with our legal office as to whether, because they are differentiated between those 2 functions, if the school district had the discretion to say the Whale Museum, for all of their costs, let's just call it $500 around numbers, and then you were paying, you were going to pay them for transportation costs.
Yeah, like I said, how we've done it with similar grants is we bring the schools over and we say, okay, we're giving you free admission, free cost of the program, and we will reimburse you, or not so much reimbursement, but we're going to give you a certain amount of money to go towards transportation. So whatever that, and it's based upon how many classes you bring us.
Okay, I would say the best way for that to be reflected is that if that is something that you are providing to them, yeah, you include that as part of your programmatic costs. That is transportation cost to your organization, not to the school, because then, yeah, they wouldn't be asking for transportation costs if that's how that is working out with you. And so, if your cost for that program is $500 and your transportation cost is another $500, like that is $1,000 that you would ask that you would continue to pay the school and not come out of their function, if that's how you want to continue to run that. Because the school district will be given an X amount of dollar transportation budget for them, because not all programming will work the same way, for them to be used to be reimbursed from our program. Does that make sense?
Kind of. I'm still struggling with understanding whether, if I write this proposal with the idea we have in mind, whether I'm going to actually put that transportation cost in our proposal, or if the school has to go request that from you guys, and that's separate. So like if
they don't have to, they don't have to. And if the best financial path forward is you getting it via your grant and you paying the school to bring the transportation over, that's great. and then they can use their transportation budget towards other means, because I have a hard time believing that the overall amount of funds are going to completely replace their, in classroom or field trip costs across the district. And so wherever anyone can get help from, they're going to take help from. They do not have to request transportation costs from us. And so if that works for your program, you would continue to ask for it as part of your proposal and pay the school.
So it could be written like we've done it before, like
Correct.
that same sort of style where we send a check to the schools and say, this is how much money you got to go towards transportation with bringing the kids over.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's very helpful.
Absolutely. Andrew, hand up next.
Sorry, my mic was messed up. I don't have much time. I've got kids coming. I'm a high school art teacher here at Friday Harbor. So I had two questions for you. One is the impact as far as the 50% match. Like, I want to take kids to the Seattle Museum and go down there and do that. Is that something I've got to come up with 50% of that funding to be able to get that to happen? That's one question as far as transportation and all of that goes, because that's probably not happening. I'm not, I'm at the table, looking for some funding. That's the problem. I don't have it. The other thing that I'm wondering is, when I spoke to the city council when this was all, in its infancy and starting, the other thing that I asked about was bringing artists in to work with our students. I've been talking to Alchemy about that, and we're hoping to get artists and residents coming through and doing some things with our students. A lot of times it's things that we're not really able to do, like ceramics, wheel throwing, maybe it's some kind of etching process. The issue becomes into materials too. On the cost and the equipment. And I'm just not sure how that all works, if that's on Alchemy to deal with that, or if that's a conjunction, like we work in tandem on that. I just don't know.
All right, let me start with question number 2, because I think that's much easier for me to answer than question number 1. But I'll answer them both. Question number 2, fabulous use of what this program is intended to do. Really, really excited. So the way that this program should work is that it starts off with you and Alchemy figuring out what the cost of those traveling artists are and what the materials will be. And Alchemy is going to be the one to get those, provide those, and then provide that invoice to the school to pay. And then, so the school will pay Alchemy, and you have paid for the teachers, you paid for the materials, Alchemy is taken care of. From there, that cost is sent to us as a program, and we reimburse the school. Does that answer that question?
Yes, the thing is I'll have to work with my business office, because we're basically coming up with money from where I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, is that out of the art budget? Because I'm telling you, that is pretty meager, my friend. And is it coming from what source is the school going to pull from to pay Alchemy right out of the gate? You know what I'm saying? The later being reimbursed. The issue is, where's the money going to come from the district to do the initial payment? And I think a lot of districts are going to struggle with that. I don't think that's an easy thing because of our budgetary constraints.
Understood. And Gabriel and I had a conversation with all 4 school superintendents this summer, and had a good conversation about that. But now that like guideline materials, and we'd sent them a draft stuff, have been developed, maybe it's a really good opportunity to get those superintendents and any admin, finance, business directors in there, just to make sure that folks feel confident, because because it can be invoiced on a monthly basis. It doesn't need to be a long-term reimbursement process. It's meant to turn around pretty quickly. And I think like Friday Harbor, I believe, is queued up for like $44,000 for the district. And so there is money there to pay for those things, and it can come in a net 30. And so hopefully it doesn't create too much of a pinch for those things.
Okay. Yeah, I'll talk with Fred, and I'll talk with Andrea and see, how that could be in place. Because I envision this as something where we have those artists coming in, maybe once a month, and working with the kiddos and artists in residence and that. And then as far as the field trip thing, that's a big one, and it was one that I spoke about when I had the opportunity to speak to the city council on this before this became a reality. Was that we really are hopeful to have the opportunity to be able to get our kids off island for more than just, sports programs. We're really struggle with that. It's super expensive, and it's just not something that we're very often able to do.
Yes. So the funds that relate to schools operate different than the impact, because you're not applying for an impact grant. These funds that go to your school, so there is a way, because the state legislature, what they wrote is not super clear on that, but in talking with other entities, there was kind of a consensus workaround. So what ends up happening is that the Friday Harbor High School is not the ones taking the students to the Burke Museum or to the Seattle Opera. What it is it's let's call it the San Juan Community Theater. They are the ones that organize this thing. And so, and then the school can pay for the transportation costs, but it is actually this nonprofit that thinks one of the best learning experiences is for the schools to go off and do these off-island things. And so with that, there is no one-to-one match contribution as part of that. So yes, that is possible. Other organizations or other cities and municipalities are doing that as well. Because it's not an impact grant, it doesn't have the match requirement of that. But we need to work with a nonprofit needs to be necessary. Work with a nonprofit.
So would I work with like Alchemy or some other arts organization to try to organize that, to say, okay, guys, you're going to be helping us with this as far as how this rolls out. You're going to be kind of in charge of this. We're taking the kids to the Seattle Art Museum.
Correct.
And it would be through them that we would do that. That
is correct. But you could still use school buses and use your transportation dollars.
Okay, because there's quite a few kids, and I don't know that they're all fitting in in the Alchemy bus, which is kind of small. So anyway, I'll work with them on that and then get back to you, because I know people have a million questions, and I'll probably need to talk to you guys a little bit more in more detail.
100%. And we appreciate folks' patience and grace with us as we are asked questions for the first time. And it's always things that we may need to come back to you after we get better guidance from the legal department, or have an opportunity to look at those, how other folks have done it and why did they do it, kind of thing. So thank you for your patience, and we're going to be ready for all those additional questions throughout this process, and we will work to get answers as quickly as possible. Christopher, I believe you're next up.
Hello there. Thanks, Brandon, for all your input. We're a well-established arts organization, Orcas Island Chamber Music Festival, and we're all applying for what you call the Impact Grant, but the Impact Grant basically states new organizations, innovative programming. Are we supposed to focus on that for our application, or can we focus?
No, it can be for your it could be for your existing programming. Absolutely.
Perfect. That's all I needed to know.
100%.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Janet.
Hello. My question was actually quite similar, particularly because at the very beginning, you had mentioned the comprehensive versus the impact, but this year, since the comprehensive is not available to us, is it okay for someone established like Lopez Community Center to apply? That's my first question. And the second one is just to clarify, capital projects is it acceptable in this on the list?
Yes, ma'am. So to both your questions, are organizations that would otherwise be applying for comprehensive grants, are they eligible to be applying for the impact grants? Yes, absolutely. This program is for everyone this year. We want to get as many dollars out the door as possible, but without a full year's funding, because that threshold is higher for comprehensive grants, want to make sure that we're not teeing up people to not get what they request without a full year's funding. So yes, please be applying for that as an eligible organization. 2, capital grants. Yep, absolutely. It can pay for any sort of capital upgrades, as long as it's for the purpose of for producing programming.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you both for your time too. I really appreciate this.
Absolutely. And I believe we're on to Isabel. Sorry, Isabel, I couldn't hear any of that. It was super, super soft. Could you repeat?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that better? Okay. Yeah, I'm curious about the is it possible to have both an impact and comprehensive grant at the same time? So if we applied for the impact this year and then next year we applied for comprehensive, would you be eligible to have those both concurrently?
I'm going to answer your timeline question first, and then I think what you're after. So because the impact grant is a 1 year that would go from July 1 to June 30, by the time next year's grant goes into effect, that would also start on July 1, and the impact grant would be completed at that time. So in this scenario, you're not holding both of those grants at the same time. And to the heart of the question, when both grant programs are open next year, yes, organizations can only apply for one form of the grant. You can apply for comprehensive if you are eligible for that category, or you can apply for an impact grant, but you cannot apply for both if you're eligible for both.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. I do have one other question. I'm with Friends of the San Juans, and we do a lot of programming in the schools. We do like hands-on science-based programming, and I'm still a little unclear on, yeah, like if the school would apply or if we would apply, and then if it is the school, like, where are the requirements for, it sounds like it's a different application, different set of requirements. For example, there's no one-to-one match. Like, where is that information? And I'm still struggling to understand, like, if we want to be a nonprofit that the schools are working with, is that on us or is that on them? And yeah.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate?
Absolutely. So that is on the schools. And so they receive a dollar amount allocation for, so if Friends of the San Juans is taking the kids out to the beach and doing programming there, or you're going into the classroom, your organization would invoice the school as you normally would, and then it's up to the school to invoice us for if they would like that particular programming to be reimbursed. Because again, of the monies available to schools, I don't know what their professional service in classroom learning or field trips budgets are, but I suspect that what we're able to provide will not cover all of those things. And so it is up to the schools to work with nonprofits to do that programming for reimbursement purposes.
Yeah, I think so this is really a chance to reach out to the schools and see if you offer something like that, if they're willing to do the reimbursement process instead of you putting in your grant application process as part of your programming. That makes sense.
Okay, so the school would do the application. So if the nonprofit's applying, it's really for something public that's like not related to the school. Like anything with the school, that would be on them to apply. Is that true?
Yes, if that, like, the school will be offered dollars, and if how they want to do that for professional programming is up to them. Now, if your organization is less interested in doing general public stuff and you want to ensure via a successful application that you get to do that programming, because let's say so many high school kids go to the Seattle Art Museum that it wipes the school's budget and they no longer have the funds to do other things. And that was that school district's priority. There's no money left for them to do reimbursement, and they're going to have to do that out of the rest of their field trip professional development budget. Or the thing that was most important to Friends of the San Juans is we want to get school kids out here. And so we're happy for this to be our proposal instead of general public programming. But your application can be about multiple types of programs, which is we want to offer 2 field trips for kids here, and this is what it's going to cost us to do that. And then we want to do 3 general public programs. Like, it doesn't have to be a separate application for each type of program. It's just to support the type of programming that you're putting together. Does that make better sense?
Yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Tracy.
Sorry, there we go. That question I just want to make sure with what I think I want to do with this grant will actually work then. So how we've done other grants like this for programming is we will say in our grant, all right, we want to provide this program free for the schools. We want to offset the admission so they don't have to pay admission for the students. We'll help contribute to transportation, if not outright pay for the full transportation for the kids to come. But usually it's all us being like it's our like the grant the grant funder is reimbursing the Whale Museum. The grant funder is not reimbursing the school. We send the school a check that will say, here's how much we owe you for transportation that you paid for those expenses. So can it just that question makes me like wonder, is that still, can it work that same way?
To me it can, and then the school is going to use its reimbursement ability with other types of field trip and professional development. Like if the thing that's most important about the Whale Museum is we want to do these things with school kids, and that's what you're applying for your grant for, the school is just going to say, okay, we have money to go do to reimburse these other types of field trips, in classroom learning stuff, etc.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, and so one of the things I really enjoy about these questions is that it allows Gabe and I to make notes about how we can further define and put out materials that make these things more clear. So thank you for your great questions, and I hope we gave clear answers, but we're going to, when you put pen to paper, we can get more clear and see what we can come up with in regards of how it interfaces between schools and nonprofits, and what those distinctions are and responsibility areas, et cetera. So I hope folks are clear. If not, please get a hold of us via email or one-on-one, and we will continue to work with that. Are there other questions from folks? Okay. If you're anything like me, I know that oftentimes after these things, about 5-10 minutes, hour, while I'm trying to sleep at night, I think about the questions that I didn't think of while I was in the session. So please feel free to reach out to us at any time. Really appreciate your time. I know we're just a little bit over that hour, so I think this has been really, really great. So again, thank you so much for your time. Really looking forward to seeing your applications and seeing what kind of fabulous programming this can support here in San Juan County this next year. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Yep. And if you guys want, there's another webinar tomorrow, 6 o'clock. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.